Hey, are you at the Power of Narrative conference today? Man, did you use the Narrative 20 discount code? I sure hope you did. I'm not there. Bummer. But thanks to Power of Narrative for letting a wet dog into their living room. Want to get better at pitches? Subscribe to the hottest thing since me and 11-inch inseam shorts pitch club. You get to read actual pitches from writers who sold their work and hear them audio annotate their reasoning throughout. It now includes rough transcripts in the footnotes, going forward. I might go back and do the others. I don't know. It's a lot. You read a little, you listen a little, and you learn a lot. Forever free. Go to welcometopitchclub.substack.com to sign up. You heard me. Forever free. I'm not like one of those guys. Welcome to pitchclub.substack.com. Come.
I was in the shower and I had a vision. I really did.
I have a resting, don't give a shit face. So.
Oh, wouldn't you know it? It's my mom's 87th birthday today. Haven't seen her in a few years, but it's my understanding she's basically eating pureed food at this point. She probably wouldn't recognize me if you saw me anyway, so, such is life. Might see her in the fall if I can beat the Reaper, It's a creative nonfiction podcast, a show where I blah, blah, blah about blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's start over. The show where I talk to tellers of true tales about the true tales they tell. I'm Brendan O'Mara with apologies. Not feeling good today. CNFers got some shitty-ass news and I'm floundering. Who do we have today? Why, it's Laura LeBleu and Paul von Zielbauer, the founders of Geezer Magazine, a new print-only magazine exploring the Gen X aging experience. It's a killer experience at that. Issue 1 came out several months ago, and it's an 11 by 15-inch size thing, and it has pieces by Kim Cross and Tom Lee Tomlinson, among others. Issue 2 comes out any day now and features an essay from ya boy. You can read my pitch for the essay at welcometopitchclub.substack.com, titled Pitching from the Hip. Selling Pitch Club hard. Did you want to learn about the cost of paper? Well, that's good because we talk about the cost of paper. Like, not dollars and cents, but it's a thing. Show notes of this episode and more at BrendanO'Mara.com. Hey. There you can find newsletter sign-up forms, blogs, and other news about the CNF Pod Expanded Universe. Should you choose, the show's Instagram handle is at Creative Nonfiction Podcast, if you care to follow there. If you want to trend me in the direction of actually making a living wage from the podcast, you can hit up patreon.com/CNFpod. There are some fun perks in proximity to you, boy. Free ways to support the show are just leaving kind reviews on Apple Podcasts or ratings on Spotify or ratings and reviews of the Frontrunner. They add up and they all matter. Trust me, they all matter. So Laura LeBleu dreamed up Geezer Magazine in the shower, that incubator of great ideas. In her life, she's been an Emmy award-winning TV producer, a lead singer in an Italian band. I don't know if she's singing Italian or it's just a band that's Italian. I don't know. I don't get into specifics there. Voice of a virtual character, stilt-walking circus ringmaster, minor gay icon, and an NYC cabaret performer. She worked in tech for a bit, and it was draining her soul. And her creativity muscles were atrophying, so she decided to do something. So she decided to bootstrap a magazine. I subscribed. Paul has ridden a bicycle from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City, spent 11 years as a journalist with the New York Times, where his work was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, that little thing. As the Great Recession hit, he launched a business that got volunteers to build playgrounds for disadvantaged children overseas. Kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. It's a Parks and Rec thing. If you know, you know. According to Geezer's website, he works quietly in the basement until Laura tells him it's okay to come upstairs. Rare is it okay to come upstairs. Fun chat that covers the appeal of print in a digital world, that fine line between being print only, but how much should you be digital. Call it a digital fish bait, maybe. I don't know. I'm just coming up with that at the top of my head. Influences such as Mountain Gazette, zigging while others zag, or zagging while others zig. I don't know. The strange creature coming out of the forest, the oyster that forms the pearl, the people trying to pick up the fountain, and metaphors. All the metaphors. Really fun chat from a great magazine that needs your support. Visit geezermagazine.com to check them out and consider subscribing. It's not cheap, but you get such a unique, cool experience. It's truly one of a kind. I subscribed, and no, I don't get kickbacks or commissions. So settle in for this and stay tuned for a parting shot sharing terrible, terrible news. Nothing says stay to the end like terrible, terrible news. Ruth.
Definitely louder than whatever dumb fuck question is that you want to ask him.
You know, for fuck's sake, at least we tried.
I hate this guy. It's exactly that. You know what? I'm not a piece of shit.
This is going to have to interest somebody somewhere other than me.
Take us to the moment when you guys generated the idea to take on this project.
Shall I, Paul?
Well, it was in the shower, and Laura was in the shower, and she'll tell you the story.
Yes. So this is the genesis for Geezer did take place when I was in the shower, but the surrounding context of that is that Paul had been working on his Substack called Aging with Strength for quite a while, and I was, a part of that development, just conversationally speaking, and so I had been marinating in those conversations around what it is to age with strength. So I'd started to get obsessed with print magazines, specifically like Mountain Gazette, Adventure Journal, Ori, which is a wonderful magazine if you're not familiar with it. But I had started to reconnect with the power of print and how it made me feel, how I was experiencing the stories in a different way than what I was experiencing when I was consuming them digitally. So take those two things together, put me in the shower, and boom, Geezer magazine explodes out of my brain. It came to me like Athena, out of the ocean, fully formed. And I knew I wanted to do a print magazine by, for, and about Gen X and the Gen X aging experience. And I knew I wanted to call it Geezer. And I think I got out of the shower and I was like, we're going to do this. This has to happen, whether you want to or not.
Right.
Which is kind of typical for me, but it gets things done. And so here we are. Now we have a magazine.
Yeah, and Paul, what was it about this project? Like, how did you and Laura join forces like Voltron?
Oh, Laura and I have known each other for years. We met working on the same marketing team at of a tech company called ServiceNow, a company that has roughly 40,000 people working in the marketing department, and about 4 of them do anything that's worthwhile. Laura and I were among those 4, I should say. And then, so we've known each other since basically 2020, I think it was, that I joined like right after the pandemic started. So we've been batting around ideas on lots of different things, some of which you don't want to know, for 5 years, 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think it is about maybe this moment where a physical product feels it feels so good to have something physical versus the ethereal nature of everything that is so digitally interfaced?
Yeah. Paul's heard me say this before, but I feel like we're just choking on empty calories. And I use the word content in this sense because I'm kind of derisive about that word itself, content. It just feels so, it feels so banal and like, what is this thing, content, that we've all become creators of? Because we are just saturated in digital information, storytelling, podcasts, not this one, of course, but there's so much coming out at us that it felt like the right thing to do would be to zig where everyone else is zagging. And that was to make a pivot back to print magazines and to print only as far as Geezer. At this point in time, we're only distributed via subscription or picking us up at some of the stockists that carry us. But you can't go and find all of our stories. You know, you can't just click a button and be served up. You really have to appreciate them in person by holding the magazine in your hand. And that, to me, makes it more special. It feels special that way.
You know, Brendan, one of the things I've realized, sort of a minor epiphany, is that the most mundane act in American life now is to look at your phone. And fully acknowledging that there's plenty of important, real, necessary reasons to look at one's phone, but we're all doing it every moment that we're not obligated to talk to a human or to do anything that's arguably more important. And so, as I've said, you know, it seems really novel and fresh now, ironically, that to look at a piece of paper that isn't a bill or a bank statement and read it, you know, like whether it's a magazine or whether it's a book or whether it is anything that is, you know, a letter written by a friend. When was the last time you mailed or received a letter, you know, that wasn't a Christmas card? I just think that holding a magazine in your hands that doesn't look, sound, act, feel, come off as anything else you've seen anywhere else, like the people are ready for that. If it's People magazine, nothing against People, like it looks, feels, sounds, acts like, you know, lots of other magazines. But our standard for Geezer is this should be that strange creature coming out of the forest that you're like, that's really interesting. And I haven't seen that before. And that's kind of the magazine version of what we want to appeal to and create in our readers' minds.
It's a really high bar.
It's what Seth Godin would call a purple cow.
Yeah, the Seth Godin purple cow. Exactly right.
And what I also liked about it too, like when Laura and I were talking several weeks ago, what I loved about it, especially just for one, the size is anomalous. But even though it's very big, it also feels like a zine. You know, it has a cut and paste element to it that I feel is like really cool. And so like each page is like engaging the senses in a way that so many other magazines feel so like a template, and this feels like it's just it's subverting all those tropes.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And the way I describe Geezer to people who aren't familiar with it is, if you took Interview magazine, you know, the large format interview magazine called Interview, and if Interview had a threesome with McSweeney's magazine and Mad magazine, the bastard child of that tryst would be Geezer, because it incorporates, like, we're going to incorporate more of that. Laura, what are those fake ads that Mad was so great?
Right. The Mad, you know, they would have those ridiculous advertisements.
You know, they would have stickers like fake corporate products and stuff that were just making fun of the real world corporate mundane products for detergent or whatever. And so, you know, we're not going to do that exactly, but we have that element. And Laura's zine history, which I don't have, but she does, you know, comes through. Obviously, Brendan, you mentioned it. Yeah. So we're trying to be different, but also realize that of all the things that need to happen in midlife or that happen to us, we still have a lot of creativity, a lot of bold energy, a lot of wisdom and ability to kind of make something new. But we want to package it in a way that harks backward toward some of the coolest parts of our Gen X childhood and young adulthood, but also look forward to, like, what the hell can we achieve now that everyone else is kind of undervaluing us for?
Yeah, I like to say that the Geezer is if, you know, we definitely bring a DIY ethos to Geezer, which is about as Gen X as you can get, right? You know, we're the generation that made we're the MacGyver generation. Like, you know, give us some duct tape and a few twigs, and we'll figure out, like, we'll make something out of it. So it's as far as zine, the zines of our day got a budget and moved out of the parents' basement and finally, you know, exploded onto the scene.
Lots of metaphors. But I mean, even your reference, which I love, to MacGyver, like there's a certain people under which a certain age are going to be like, what's MacGyver?
Yeah, we need
Exactly
to
And
shy
right.
I
away from
remember,
that.
yeah, we're like, we own that. In fact, I remember like in 2015, I was talking with a client of mine whose son was at the lunch with us. And I used the word Rolodex, like, you should. And the 15-year-old, this is somebody who went to the fancy school in Manhattan, said, "What's a Rolodex?" Like I'd said, like the Model T or something. And that's when I knew that
You're getting old.
that I had graduated to, early middle age at that point.
Laura, tell me more about your zine history.
Oh, so I was never that cool to actually have one of my own, but I was adjacent to many people who were cool enough to have them, and I would make little attempts at creating different random things at Kinko's, because remember Kinko's, and so but what I did was just kind of saturate myself in like seeing how people were tapping into their own creativity that was very niche at the time and making something out of it. And even if it was the most random subject, there were other people out there who wanted it. So Paul likes to say this, and I agree with him that it kind of taught me at that time that when you broadcast on your own frequency, on your unique, unrecreatable energy, then the people who want to be attuned to that sort of thing will find you. And that's how we feel about Geezer. And that's the kind of reception we've been getting. What people, when they get it, they found us by whatever means, a podcast or an interview we've been on. And when they get it, they kind of lose their minds because they get what we're doing.
But Thrasher in particular, Laura, there's a
Oh,
Thrasher, like we have some,
merch.
what do
We
you
got
call it?
merch.
We have swag and merch, yeah. And the logo of Geezer is very much reminiscent of Thrasher magazine's logo.
Well, that was just kind of a fun little nod because, hey man, do you exist if you don't have merch? I don't think so. So I asked a friend of mine, I was like, listen, I need some sweatshirts. I need some cool stuff. And I want it to look like the Thrasher logo, but it needs to say Geezer instead, which just makes me happy. I mean, a lot of this stuff I think we do is just because it amuses us. If it
Yeah.
amuses
Well,
us, hopefully it'll amuse other people.
Oh, for sure. Well, that's so integral to being a creative person these days, is to really follow your taste. And then, once you get past that honeymoon period of like, oh, this is such an awesome idea, then you got to boil it down to like, all right, logistically, how are we going to get altitude? So what was step one after, the idea crystallized in your head? Now it's like, all right, we got to build some pages here and think about printing and all that fun stuff. So like, what was the first step after the idea?
Idea came first, and then it was a lot of reaching out to people. It was coming, trying to make connections, find people who had made magazines before, and to learn as much as we possibly could, because neither one of us comes from a magazine publishing background. So we reached out to, there was a guy named Bruce Wallen, who was a friend of a friend and who had been a magazine publisher for many years, kind of walked us through some basics. He helped us find the printers that we're working with. So then we started working with the printer. Okay, what do we need? When do we need it? How much is this going to cost? Because right now it's bootstrapped, and we're hoping to we need to achieve kind of velocity by this summer to make it financially viable, which I believe we will. But so yeah, we just talk to people, and then I was lucky enough. We've both been writers for many years. Paul was at the New York Times for I think 11 years, Paul. So 11 years. I've been an advertising copywriter, creative director, and most recently, a writer within the thought leadership world. So we started connecting with people, tapping them on the shoulder. I called in every favor I have ever needed to ask for from my friends, from different writers, by really just going out and being very honest and open, like, hey, we want to do this, but we don't know how. People will jump in and like they're happy to share their expertise. Not least was taking for me. I'm working on getting my master's at Harvard in the creative writing and literature department, and I stumbled into the features writing class there with Kim Cross, who we both know and love, and I got a really wonderful kind of crash course education in features writing, which is incredibly applicable to what we're doing in Geezer and the kind of storytelling we're doing. So that's a very long answer to say we didn't know anything and we had to learn everything. And the way we did it was by just knocking on doors and asking.
Yeah, what might you identify as an early hurdle and or hiccup that you butted up against that created some of that resistance that sometimes people hit the eject button and some people persevere?
The cost of paper.
Yeah. I mean, making this sucker is not cheap, but this is why I've sacrificed my creative soul to the technology world for as many years as I have, was so that I could sell some stock and buy some paper and make this sucker happen. I think another thing that's been interesting, some of the other creative friction that we've had to work through is, we're both writers, we're not designers. So who do we find to help us with the design? How do we get the photography that we need? Learning to growing our network of professional photographers that we can send out to take portraits of some of the people we're talking about. And then there's, I think, the last kind, and I won't say this is friction, or maybe it is, but I think it's a positive friction, is that Paul and I come from different backgrounds, as I was saying, and sometimes we have different ideas about how something should come to life. And between the two of us, I think that's the friction that forms, and the oyster that forms the pearl, that brings something very different and not replicable by anyone else into this magazine, having the energy of both of us, a journalist and kind of more of a creative features writer is, not narrative nonfiction is what I love. And sometimes those two things can be a little bit at loggerheads, but we process through it. And what happens is that the result is entirely different than what you're going to get anywhere else. And there's something about, being in middle-aged. I turned 50 and I looked around and I realized that I hadn't been creating for myself for, 25 years. I've been writing for other people. And that became untenable. I had to create something that felt it was part of me, and that it was something I would give to the world. And I'm not saying I'm going to leave something great to the world, but I knew that if I died before I actually made a creative contribution and was able to express myself, that I would be really that would suck.
Yeah, it's like, were you casting your gaze ahead, several decades and almost like wallowing in future regret if you don't get this off the ground?
Yeah. And, for so long I'd been trying to find that vehicle, written a screenplay, writing short stories, doing things that felt like they were my voice, but they weren't quite the form factor that worked for me. Creating a magazine is what works for me. It brings in so many so many things that I have learned how to do over the years. And this is interesting. I come from a theater background. I have a theater degree and I continue to do theater, and I've produced theater. And what I found is that producing a magazine calls on every single skill I needed to produce theater. This is the kind of storytelling that really works for the skills that I have, the skills that Paul has. Yeah, I finally found it. I'm like, yay, I found my home.
Well, I just read an amazing biography by Daniel Pollock Pelsner on Lin-Manuel Miranda and
Yeah.
the education of an artist. And it's so, he leans so heavily on that education and the collaborative component of his educational arc, Lin-Manuel's arc.
Mhm.
And he loves collaboration and any opportunity or any experience that will help him learn along the way. And I feel like this, the magazine itself here is an opportunity for the peer review and other, independent contractors, if you will, to collaborate and kind of just learn from each other. So what is that experience, sort of in the vein of Lin-Manuel Miranda? What's that been like for the peer review?
Oh man. Okay, I'll talk a little bit because then I want Paul to share, but I just want to say thank you because that is what makes this so much fun for me, and that's what brings my theater skills into play, is the ability to just to collaborate with so many people, to reach out, to learn about them, to find their stories, to help them bring their stories to life for the pages of Geezer magazine. And at the same time, to be like, okay, I still have to pay the bills. We still have to do social media. There are so many things that go into a successful magazine. And there are a lot of the same things that go into successful theater production. And you're absolutely right. It's all about being open and collaborative and having joy in working with other people and helping them bring, like I said, bring their stuff to life and also learning from them. So okay, Paul, please.
Well, yeah. The reason I'm chuckling like whoa is because it's tough to make a magazine. It's tough to do anything. It's tough to agree on when to meet for coffee. So putting a print magazine together for the first time, that's supposed to be that purple cow or that Yeti creature coming out of the forest that you've never seen but feel compelled to investigate, is bound to create conflict. And so when I've said this to Laura many times, it's like we're having this argument because we're creating a magazine, like arguably more difficult than raising a child, although maybe not arguably, but it's a really complicated thing because your judgment's coming into question. It's coming into the process. Each of our different backgrounds, although related, are not similar, that similar. And so our styles, our aesthetics, sometimes it's great because we have complementary, I think, skills and backgrounds that really help make Geezer unique. I don't think there's not many two other people who could bring the same kinds of skills and produce a magazine, I think, that's this creative and journalistic and compelling, I think. But just like the human conflict that goes into creating any magazine, especially a new one like ours, is not small, and you kind of just have to be willing to expect that there's, like in any relationship, you're going to have differences and disagreements, and sometimes and you're going to miss you're going to miss stuff, and you just have to be willing to give the other person some grace and then ask for what you need, and then provide it yourself when necessary. So I think that's the biggest thing.
And also, starting anything, there's always a huge measure of uncertainty, and that can block a lot of people from even starting in the first place. And, Laura, you kind of alluded to it earlier about just feeling that the crunch of time and really wanting to maybe leave something and make something before it's too late. And so how do you wrestle with the feelings of uncertainty, knowing that the outcome of this is yet to be determined, and yet you still have to kind of create in the face of that?
It's just belief. I truly believe in Geezer. I believe in what we're doing. I believe that people will, once they know about Geezer magazine, they're going to want to get Geezer magazine or write for Geezer magazine or be a part of it somehow. I have an unwavering, and maybe naive, commitment to seeing this vision through as much as I possibly can.
And Brendan, my response to that very good question is asking you to remember in the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson. You remember the seminal scene where his character, Nicholson's, tries to pick up the fountain and throw it out the window. And of course he can. It's it's like this thing in the middle of their asylum. But his famous line after that is, "Well, at least I tried." And then of course Chief, the other character, later throws the thing out the window because Chief's huge. But that's us, like we're the people trying to pick up the fountain. And if we don't do it, well, I don't know if you can cuss on this.
Oh, yeah.
This, for fuck's sake, at least we tried.
Yeah.
Because it would be worse to have this idea and think it's great and then come up with or follow the 100 reasons, legitimate reasons why we shouldn't do it. And then be 80, to your point earlier, Brendan, in our rocking chair and being like, gosh darn it, we should have, could have, would have done that. And that's just not good enough, especially nowadays, especially when, we all know probably more than one person getting laid off or laid off again, or who can't, find a job to save their lives, even though they have blue chip experience in a particular field, and I'm speaking about myself. I'll acknowledge right there, like it's brutal out there, and we got to do something with this energy that we have, this creativity, this knowledge, this ability to leave a lasting impression in our second halves. And so that's also what Geezer's all about.
The phrase that keeps going through my mind, and probably one of the motivating phrases when we started this, was, if not now, when? Just, if not now, when? No, now. It has to be now. Why? And once you make that decision, the universe conspires to support you, I think, when you really decide to go all in on something. And there's also, like I was talking about earlier, there's a very Gen X component to this, and it is that we know we can't depend on a corporation to support us. They're not our family. There's no job out there that's going to reward us, for sticking around. And we've seen, people our age being tossed out, which is a goddamn shame, because we really are, like, we got the goods now. But this, we have to depend on ourselves. We can't depend on anyone else. And so that's another factor of this, is just knowing that we've got to make our own magic. And if we try hard enough, I think that this will be the thing that sustains us into, the next half of our lives.
Gen X as a whole is, by and large, such an ignored demographic, and this very magazine is unignorable by its very stature and by its very look. So I imagine that's kind of like that ethos is baked right into the product, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Finally, we're standing up. We're saying, we will be heard.
Yeah, and also, you have the idea, and you're looking at cost of paper and all that stuff, which is sad and demoralizing. But then you got to fill up those pages with like great writers and everything. I mean, like Kim's obviously a great friend, and Tommy Tomlinson, who kind of closed the back of the book. How did you just start to be like, all right, you know what? How we got to fill these pages with great writers and great reporting and great voices? How did you kickstart that?
Well, like I was saying earlier, it was, once we realized we were going to do this, and as much as Paul and I would love to write everything, because that's our natural tendency, is like, well, listen, it's like, no, we need.
I actually would not like to.
Well, but you try to, Paul. He's come on. We have this conversation a lot. It's like, we have these ideas. Okay, but we're not going to write them. Who is going to write them? And so, tapping into that network. And I found Tommy through Kim. And so, finding those people like Kim Cross, who are hubs with many, many spokes out into in this case, the narrative nonfiction world. And then, Paul tapping into his network as well. We were able to we were able to really garner a lot of great voices. And then a couple like Cintra Wilson, who wrote the piece on Mark Pauline in issue #1. For those of you who haven't received their geezer, you're going to have to, get a subscription so that you know what I'm talking about, I guess. But she was a great writer who I admired back in the 90s in San Francisco. She used to have a column called Cintra Wilson Feels Your Pain. And I connected with her on, of course, where else are all the writers? We're all on Substack, right? I found her on Substack and I was like, hey, I really like you and I've read your stuff. Can we work together? The gentleman who wrote, by the way, we also have poetry in the magazine because I'm really committed to, truly deeply committed to at least having some poetry. And I found this wonderful, poet, Tim Siebels. He was the poet laureate of North Carolina for many years. And I found an amazing poem of his that was online. And, I reached out and I said, hey, this is great. We're doing this. Can we use your poem in issue #1? And he's become a wonderful collaborator and a great champion of Geezer as well. So it's tapping into your network, but it's also extending yourself into the world and finding people who might be hiding in corners somewhere, doing amazing things that you want to bring them and their voices to light as well.
Yeah, what's the challenge in just getting traction and getting attention on Geezer, given that the bulk of the work is physical and not shareable by link? So you're trying to, in a sense, blend certain digital skills with trying to drive people to the physical artifact.
Yeah, no, it's something Laura and I struggle with. We call this a print-only magazine. It is print-only. We have a website, of course, to allow people to sign up for the print-only magazine. But lately, we got approached. I'll give you an example, and Laura, you can tell me if you aren't comfortable talking about this.
We can talk about Zinio, right?
Yeah, it's like we got a guy who asked us, who just came over the transom, asking if we want to sell a cheaper version of Geezer that's digital only, that anybody in the world can get, including people here in the U.S. So because Geezer is not cheap, I mean, we charge $120 for 3 issues, which some people feel is outrageous, but I refer to the cost of paper largely driving that.
And people, because we pay our
We pay our writers, which is important to say too. Yeah. And all that costs money. I mean, quality just costs.
shipping,
But
taxes, everything.
if someone in, Canada is a good example. It's like $75 a year to ship 3 issues to Canada. And we don't want to pass that on in shipping costs on top of the already, $120 price. But so we do a smaller amount and eat the rest because we just can't bring ourselves to charge that much. If someone in Europe, for that matter, or Mongolia wanted the magazine, how the hell are we going to ship it to them and still, break even? And so here comes this guy, hey, let's, we'll put Geezer online and people can pay, a fraction of the price to have the magazine. Well, then it's not print only anymore, but it's also potentially a lifeline for people to subscribe who would never pay $125 plus $4,000 shipping to send it to Mongolia. So, where's the line? Where do we hold the line and say, nope, we're print only? And when does it make business and survival existential sense to say, well, we'll put it in digital format, and maybe it'll be a gateway, the gateway version to get people to sign up for the print, or maybe they'll just skip the print and just read it online, which goes against our entire ethos. So these are the questions we're struggling with now.
And then in addition to this, Brendan, I think one of the things you were getting at is well, how do we attract people to Geezer without having all of our content digitized, right? So they can go and say, oh, well, here's the story. And, it is difficult. So we try to, I try to kind of follow the Mountain Gazette model, which also they do not publish their stories on their website. but they do have, bits of pieces. They have fractionally distribute their content. And they also have, they're really good at marketing. My goodness. I'm like, wow, I'll take whatever they're taking because they're great at getting the word out. And so that's I think a nut that we have not cracked yet. And oh my gosh, Instagram, did social, trying to get little bits out, trying to shoot the flares up into the social media realm that will get people's attention that could be a full-time job for me if I wanted to be. So the fact that it's just Paul and myself, and we're both working to create, like, we both really want to put all of our time and energy into creating the actual product. But the fact is, marketing is huge. Social is huge. We have to do the business side. Oh, and I also still have a job, and Paul runs his Aging with Strength. So, it would be great if we could just hire someone to do all those things for us.
It is so hard to get the word out, and a lot of listeners to the show are, writers and authors who are trying to get some degree of traction, some sliver of attention out there, and to do it in a way that doesn't feel totally schlocky and slimy. It's just what are some lessons that you're learning from, like you said, that other magazine that is doing it particularly well, that you're learning that even the independent writers can learn too about how to get their work out there in a way that doesn't feel so slimy.
Yeah, it's hard. When you asked that question, the word that came to my mind was to be relentless. I think Mountain Gazette is, and this is not a knock on them at all, but they are relentless in their marketing of their product.
I think that would be a compliment.
Sure, it should be, because they're successful, and they've really grown a wonderful community around their magazine. We would love to do that as well.
And yet we can't, because we're not marketers. That's the thing, that Laura and I don't like marketing, which don't tell her employer, because she's in the marketing department.
I've been in marketing for years. Don't tell anyone.
But I don't enjoy the marketing. I don't enjoy the, hey, please come buy our product, and here's why. Like, I don't fucking care. Like, it's a problem, Brendan, because Laura's not good at it and she doesn't like it. I think I dislike it even more, and I'm clearly not good at it. But we're like, all of that, like, as much as we don't like asking people or telling people why they should be interested in this product, the flip side is that we're just that much more obsessed with making a high quality product and making something that people, we think, once they get exposed to it, if they get exposed to it, will really enjoy. So all of our creativity and energy is in making the best goddamn print only large format magazine that entertains, humors, makes you cry, does all the things, but we just don't have the gene that Mountain Gazette folks and other people have, where we just want to go out and tell the world about it. We do, but like, our energy is limited. In addition to all the things that Laura mentioned that we have going on already, we're also single parents. And so I don't know how much that, like, if that's how other people also operate, but it's a big challenge to make the time and then market the product that you've built into this thing you think is really fantastic.
Yeah, it is so hard to do that, because you want to put most of your creative energies into making something that is in fact remarkable, that people are going to remark about, but you have to put it out there so much. You have to be relentless in a way that doesn't totally sap your energy from the other things. But at the same time, it's like sometimes you feel like all you're doing is bombarding people with things, and it's like, are you being annoying, or is it? And it seems very anti-Gen X to want to, like, kind of sell out in that regard too. So it's like this idea is like, it's almost like, here's this thing, take it or leave it, I don't care.
Right.
Yeah. I think maybe a lot of your listeners, if they're writers and artists and so forth, will understand. It's like, that energy is zero sum. If you put it toward the marketing, it's like you're taking it away from the creative generating part of, at least that's how I feel. Like, I wish I didn't. I wish I had abundant energy in both, but it's zero sum. So I'm not able to think about and execute marketing ideas and then still have the energy to go back and edit a piece fully diving into it, or writing it and reporting it, and think about art and graphics and layout. It just, I don't have that ability to do both. So that's why I think we default to where we're strong, the content side. Sorry for using the C word. But we need help on the marketing, probably.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I mean, the last thing, and we would want to see, obviously, is to put all of our money and time and energy and love and all sorts of all sorts of creative juices into this product, and then have and then just go, hey, we got this great thing, and to have it land on crickets. Which has not been the case so far. I mean, we have, hundreds of subscribers, and this is issue number 1.
I mean, when people see it, they go for it, and word of mouth has been really great. And every time we have any exposure, this hopefully being, if you decide to publish actually this interview, like it's all of it creates a little bit more of, like, there's not just smoke now, there's a little bit of a tinder fire going. And we just need to stoke that.
And it was really fascinating. Last weekend, I woke up on Saturday morning around 7 a.m. or so, and I saw that we had 2 or 3 new subscribers. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And it was like before 7 a.m. West Coast time on a Saturday. And then throughout the day, just boom, boom, boom. By the end of the day, we had something like 30 new subscribers. And I was going, what just happened? And what happened was, we got picked up by a woman who has a newsletter. She's a writer. She has a newsletter that goes out to 400,000 people. And her husband found Geezer, liked it, and she put us in the newsletter. So just these little things, these little connections, when people find it, they like it, and they talk about it. We're really hoping that those sort of organic conversations are going to be at the heart of what is going to be our success.
And just to go back to, Laura's phrase about getting picked up by a woman, we'll do anything to make this magazine sell, and we're willing to get picked up by men or women, or anyone for that matter, if it helps us sell the magazine.
Really, seriously.
Well, now you're working on issue 2, which should come out in the ensuing month or two, depending on when this
mid-March, probably right around like March 20th. We have to get the files to the printer on March 10th.
All right. Yeah. So you're in the throes of it right now.
Yeah.
So what have been some lessons from issue 1 to issue 2?
Can I start with that one, Laura? And then,
all yours.
So there's well, let's see. Some of the feedback we've gotten is, hey, I thought this was going to be more nostalgia based. Yeah. And then other people are like, why the fuck did you guys spend 8 pages on dogs? And to which I refer strictly to Laura on that call. And she has, there's an explanation, but so we were the metaphor that I use for issue number 1, Brendan, is, do you remember when you were 16 and you and your friends, or 15 or 12, and you thought you're going to build a car in your garage because your friend has some wood, your buddy has an engine, somebody else has some tires, and you're like, let's build a car. And similarly, that's how kind of we put together issue number 1. It's just like, who do we know? What are our ideas? Like, let's fill some pages with stuff too that we think is interesting. So there's photos of Laura's, of parts of Laura's home. I'll just leave it at that in issue number 1. Going to number 2, our goal was, okay, now we've established proof of concept of sorts, but it's still nascent, inchoate, formative. How do we nail the value proposition that we've been talking about with you over the course of the last, several minutes now? In issue number 2, how do we drill down do we want the dogs in again, or a version of that? Do we want to focus more on this angle or these subjects or nostalgia more? And that's kind of what we've been wrestling with. So I'll just leave it
Yeah.
there.
Okay. People love those dogs. And let me just tell you, they do. They do. I've got a lot of
Some
good
people do.
feedback. Surprising. But they're, I will say they're all senior dogs. So these are geezer dogs. They're golden retriever geezers, which is why they fit perfectly and bring a very different sort of charming little break into the festivities of issue number 1, I think. Yes, the different things that we've learned are lessons along the way. It's interesting because, we've talked about, do we want to have a unifying theme? Because many magazines do that, the summer theme, whatever, what is the unifying theme? And I think we have kind of shied away from that because we want to keep the aperture as wide as possible and learn as we create. What I've found, we have different kinds of readers. There's a certain reader who looks at this and kind of gets that zine thing and thinks, wow, this is kind of wild. It's weird and it's fantastic. And then we've had some feedback, and the word that was used was, it's very artsy. And they don't mean it, I think, necessarily as a dig, but as an observation. And so this is like, okay. And I spoke with one person recently who, like, I've had that word used twice, and it's mostly, well, it's some of our male readers. I don't know if that makes a difference, but he was like, I would love to see more fun, nostalgic things. Where do we have that fun nostalgia pop up? And how do we balance kind of our artier nature, our more storytelling sort of nature? So this is a conversation that Paula and I have had a lot, is how do we strike that balance? Because I love old lunch boxes. I love, there are so many cool totems of Gen X childhood that we do just, gravitate toward. But how do we bring that in and give a nod and a wink to people who are going to want to see that stuff, but also dig into the artsier side of what we do. So,
and also to speak candidly to our audience, which we always, I think, try to do. Laura and I have a push-pull relationship with regard to like how feminine and how masculine, so to speak, are we going to make, is this issue going to come off? So you mentioned, Brendan, or you asked about issue number 2. One of the things that Laura and I have, I wouldn't say struggled, but are like not argued in a bad way, but sort of debated over is like, how much menopause stuff are we going to put in? Can I get some, like, I have guns because I shoot at a range, like sport shooting. Like, can we get some guns in there? Can we get a little bit of male energy also? And of course, Laura's, willing to do that. But there is, like, a lot of, Laura comes from the theater, so there's theater in this. Laura loves dogs. There's dogs in there, and that's fine. Laura has spoken about menopause, so there's menopause, which, as it should be. Like I'm saying, I'm not saying those are subjects that I oppose. I don't. But let's appeal to also people, the men out there who are geezers who also may be interested in all the above, but also some of the other things that may be, I guess, more traditionally male oriented. And, this is all a conversation. So I know I probably came off like the biggest asshole in the world just now, but it's really just a conversation of how do we balance this to appeal to the most Gen Xers possible.
Which is, it's an interesting place to be. And this is something I've actually been thinking about recently, is the success of some of the more niche publications. And they're successful because they are so niche, For us, we're generational, and we're men and women, and, within a generation. So in a way, I would feel like it would work for us because that does give us a huge addressable market. But there is something that makes it more difficult because we don't have that really specific, target audience to go after. And we,
Unless we do a quarterly insert on menopause quarterly and just have like a
no, believe me, I am sick of it. I've been inundated in so much, so many, my feed is full of different ways to mitigate hot flashes and yada, yada, yada. Like I would think every middle-aged woman at this point has been so inundated that we're all ready to just be like, no, stop, please, please. Can we
and the reason you're inundated, just to give myself a little bit of balance on, is that you guys have been lied to
Yes.
By the medical industry for a long time about menopause and treatments of it, and that's why there's such a blowback, rightfully so now, toward understanding what the hell it is and why men and women should know more about
Totally.
it.
We're pissed, really.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and also Brandon, so it's funny that we'd be talking about this. We're actually covering this in issue number 2. One of our reported pieces is going to be kind of the hook into it is a documentary. Thank you. See, menopause brain. The documentary is being made right now called Menopunks. And it looks at menopause and it really taps into like the punk rock scene in Portland and has a lot of different women who are in their 50s who are still sharp as shit, who are still riot girls, and they're talking about their menopause experience. So that's one sliver of it. That's a way into the story, because what that documentary and then what our piece is really about is medical gaslighting and the incredible failures of the institution, like our health institution, to support women going through menopause based on a flawed interpretation of the Women's Health Initiative scientific study that came out in, I think, early 90s. And all of a sudden all these women were told that if they go on to hormone therapy they have a higher risk of breast cancer. Freaked everyone out, screwed a whole generation of women out of getting hormone replacement therapy that actually they needed. So there are a lot of different, so it's about menopause, but it's about larger issues. And it's also about like the failure of scientific journalism as well. And I think that's a huge thing to talk about it. And the woman who's writing it is this wonderful woman named Kate Gammon, who went through the MIT science journalism program. So she's got a great take on all of that. So I'm really excited to get that draft.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I also liked this idea. Some people might have expressed disappointment that it wasn't as nostalgic, but
Mm.
I love the idea that it's maybe there is some real estate that can be used to like look back at these totems of the past. But I love the idea that it feels very kinetic and of the moment and embracing a particular time of life and looking forward, not just looking back too.
Yeah, we don't want to be mired in nostalgia. We want to really talk about, the ways that Paul likes to say this, like, how are we aging with strength, with energy, with vitality, with creativity? I love talking about how do we sustain and evolve our creativity up through our 50s and beyond.
Yeah. There's also, part of that discussion of aging with strength, however one defines strength, certainly not only physical, like we don't want to be political, but we also don't want to be, we'd also just have to acknowledge that, there's a lot of people going through, experiencing a lot of anxiety right now, including us.
Yeah.
And, the reasons for it may be on one side or the other or multifaceted sides. And we're not trying to, be didactic about what we believe because it doesn't matter. But the fact is, a lot of people who in the English speaking world right now are wondering what the hell is going on with their world and what they should or could do about it or not. Like what's the cost of speaking up? All of these things that we'd like to reflect in the magazine, without getting overtly political or one-sided about it. So we have some big choices to make on how to do that properly in a way that is additive to and appreciated by our audience and not rejected by half of it. So
Yeah.
that's also important.
Well, and that's where our storytelling choices come in, because scientifically, I mean, actually, it has been proven that really the only thing that changes people's minds are stories. So if we can tell stories that help to bring in perspectives that we feel are important and that might open up someone else's heart or minds to someone else's experience and help to make the world a better place, then that's what we're going to do.
Oh, amazing. Well, as I bring these conversations down for a landing, I always love asking the guests for a recommendation of some kind. Laura, you might be clued into this just because of the confirmation notes. And Paul, you can just kind of hear how Laura takes this. But I just love asking for a recommendation of some kind for the listeners out there. And it's just like anything you're excited about that you want to share with the listeners. So I'll start with you, Laura, and then we can head over to Paul for the closer.
Wow. I mean, everyone knows that Heated Rivalry is, we've already jumped on that bandwagon. So that one's probably already out of the station.
But how broad is anything I'm excited about, or that?
Anything you like. So I'd say it could be like a brand of coffee or a walk in the park, a fanny pack. It doesn't matter.
Interesting. Well, I'll mention this. I've been struggling for 2 years to develop a meditation habit, by which I mean not 2 hours like Jack from Twitter, in a robe at a mountaintop thinking and just meditating, but 10, 5, 2 minutes a day. Because when I do it, I'm blown away by how much creative energy I get, meaning like ideas. People I should reconnect to, ideas for future posts or articles in the magazine, ways to be better, like things I need to apologize to my 10-year-old about, all kinds of stuff. And yet it's so hard to create those 2, 5, or 10-minute elements in my day, moments just to sit, breathe, as they say, focus on your breathing, and just let your thoughts run in front of you as if leaves, on a stream that you're observing going by you. And so I think doing that has been one of the most additive and helpful and calming and just creative ways to start 2026 that I could recommend.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad we were able to carve out some time and talk some shop about the origin story of Geezer and where it is and where it's going. And it's real exciting stuff. And I'm really excited for what you guys have brought into the world. That I'm really excited for what's coming forward. So just thank you so much for carving out the time to do this. This is awesome.
Man, thank you for having us.
Thanks,
And we are, because I know this is such a great podcast and you've had so many wonderful people on it and you have great writers who listen, please reach out. You reached out with that to me after you learned about this and you sent me this great pitch, and I loved it. It was kind of like one of those off the top of your head pitches. And I was like, thank you. Yes. Boom. I will take that. So, please, if there are people out there listening to this, writers who are interested, who feel like they have a geezer story for us, go to our website at geezermagazine.com. You can submit. I'd love to hear from people. And of course, even better, become a subscriber. That would be great. Look at me marketing so hard.
Brendan, I feel like having edited podcasts before and knowing your pain that's about to happen, I feel like we should pay you to edit this monstrosity down to size. So tell us if you want me to send you a $20 bill in the mail.
Yes. Awesome. That was fun, right? Thanks to Laura and Paul for coming on, and be sure to visit geezermagazine.com to subscribe and follow them on Instagram at Geezer Magazine. Issue 2 comes out any day now. I'm not one of these toxic positivity guys. I'm not even one of these optimistic guys. I'm like your classic toxic pessimist guy. I should have known better. I dipped my toe in the optimism pool, and look where it got me. I should have known better, man. I should not have gotten my hopes up. I got a little cocky. I started telling people the next book I was working on. I started to leak that information, which I guess technically I'm still working on for now, but maybe not. Yeah, my editor for The Front Runner turned down my latest book proposal. No bigs. Just something I've been working on for a year. I understand rejection is the name of the game, but my understanding from a short email from my representative was that sports books are a tough sell and there's no time peg and really nothing revelatory in this book so far. So far in my research. So Mariner books passed. I have a few points worth noting here. I've read several sports biographies recently, and none of them have a time peg or anniversary. So that's kind of bullshit. I'm getting pitched a lot of sports books, so I'm not entirely sure they're a tough sell. So reading between the lines is that it's a sports book written by me that's a tough sell. The Frontrunner is more or less a stain on my record now, which is a bit of a bummer. Didn't sell enough. Now I'm garbage. That's the game. I'm supposed to chat with my agent about next steps, whether she wants to take it wider to other editors and publishers or not, or whether I should just abandon this book and find a new subject, which would mean a new book proposal and another year of my life down the drain. I'm running out of years, man. I'm not entirely hopeful for an objectively long life. I mean, there might be some interest from another editor or two. I think one several months ago actually approached my agent and asked her if she had a client working on this particular topic. And she said, well, yes, as luck would have it, I do. So there might be someone out there. And then maybe I'll turn this negative parting shot up on its head and be like, guess what? Got great news. I have a feeling she might want me to abandon ship on this book. Just and when I see her face on the computer screen and we talk about it, she doesn't exactly light up at the topic, and that's never a good sign. I mean, so yes, I think she might want me to abandon it. Like, otherwise, like, why even bring that up in the email? Like, I have 3 other ideas, but none are sports related, which is kind of my lane. One is science related, but I'm not a science writer. One is food related, and I'm not a food writer. And one is writing related, and I'm a writer, sort of. What I am is bummed out. Like, I'm conflicted because people are getting bombed into mush, and here I am complaining that my little book didn't get accepted. Like, in the grand scheme, big fucking deal, B.O. I kind of thought my editor for the Frontrunner would take this book. Yeah, maybe not at $150,000 advance I got for the Frontrunner, but maybe $50,000, maybe $25,000, $15,000, $5,000. I mean, the 15 or 5,000, like, those numbers would likely have my agent fire me, but the book would 100% earn out. It's a big enough topic where it would earn out at a small advance. And I barely spent my other one because my wife didn't think I would meet my deadline and have to pay everything back, so I barely touched it. So I actually have, like, some money in the bank. Anyway, doesn't matter. But the fact that they said no dice means they've got a problem with me, which makes me sad. It makes me, in the moment here, like, I'm having a moment, and it makes me want to give up. Like, what the hell am I even doing? I don't even know what I'd do. There's 2 career paths that appeal to me. One is bartending. The money's better than it's better than I can make as a writer. It's fast paced. It's pretty fun. The other is collecting shopping carts at the grocery store. That job seems amazing. You'll definitely get your steps in, and you don't have to talk to people. This is, of course, going a bit overboard. Rejection's the norm. Books get rejected by publishers all the time, often dozens of times. The only ones who don't get rejected are the people who just print money by showing up. Your New Yorker writers, your mom, etc. I think what I found most unsettling, aside from the part where it was clearly a me problem and not a book problem, was the idea that maybe you want to find a new topic. I think that's what has me so glum and want to climb back below the misty mountains. The idea of ginning up a new idea and then lobbying for fucking access and getting enough material to then write another fucking 70-page book proposal is so daunting an exercise that I want to get drunk and run into the freeway just before rush hour because the traffic is still moving at a good clip by then. I'm looking at piles of the Frontrunner in my office right now, and I'm saying, this is your fault. And there are invariably people out there who have no shortage of disdain for me who are laughing. Serves that fucker right. Who does that little bitch think he is? Traveling in our circles. I will say that I came up with a pretty good evening routine for better sleep. Want to hear it? It's worked 2 of the last 3 nights, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. no food within 3 hours of bedtime, no water within 3 hours of bedtime, or any other fluids, so you don't have to piss 4 times at night. No phone or screen time within 3 hours of bedtime, and take a shower. For me, this usually starts at 6 p.m. I'm in bed reading by 8:30 most nights. The combo of those things has made me stay asleep longer and wake up at the alarm's first call, and I wake up and say, what fresh hell awaits? And I go make coffee and curse the sun. So things are going great right now. I mean, it all seems silly, right? This world is so fucked up right now. So many people are doing so many horrible things, and here I am lamenting that my book idea didn't get picked up. Like, what right do I have to complain? What a piece of shit, you know? What maladaptive behaviors can I get myself into now? Time to drink myself into a low-level coma. Just tip me onto my side, okay? Stay wild, CNFers. And if you can't do, interview. See ya.